All right, let's go. Time to dust off our fedoras and dive into Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. We're talking the new game, not another movie. And you guys, you sent in a ton of forum discussions, professional reviews. It's a wild mix, so let's figure out if this game's the real deal or just another lost artifact.
You know, the first thing that jumps out is just how positive the reviews are. I mean, this isn't just decent for a movie game territory. We're looking at an 87 Metascore, which is incredible. Even the big guys, IGN, GameSpot, Eurogamer, they're all saying this is top-tier indie.
Yeah, you don't see that kind of praise very often for games based on movies. But I'm also seeing a lot of cautious folks in the forums. People are remembering games that was amazing pre-release and then...
Oh yeah, totally. Gamers have been burned before. They've got their reasons to be skeptical. Remember Starfield? Huge hype, amazing early reviews. Then everyone realized the gameplay got old fast.
Exactly. So how does Great Circle avoid that fate?
Well, the answer might be in the developers. MachineGames.
Hold on, MachineGames. Those are the Wolfenstein guys, right? Seems like an odd choice for an indie game.
Yeah, it does on the surface, but think about it. They're known for tight action, gritty stories, and surprisingly, a lot of stealth. Plus, a bunch of their devs worked on Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh, right. Another game that did the whole action stealth blend really well.
Exactly. So their background actually suggests they might be perfect for a different kind of indie experience.
And from what I'm reading, they actually nailed it. It doesn't sound like a typical run and gun shooter. Reviewers keep saying stealth is a huge part of the game. Like you actually have to use Indie's whip, disguises the environment to your advantage.
It's almost like they took inspiration from games like Hitman or The Forgotten City, where thinking and planning are just as important as quick reflexes.
So instead of just mowing down Nazis, you're encouraged to think like Indie. Use your smarts, the environment, outsmart your enemies.
Exactly. And it sounds like the combat, when you do get into it, is super creative.
Oh yeah. Like what? More than just the whip and pistol.
Way more. I'm talking crutches, brooms, even whiskey bottles. Imagine cracking a Nazi over the head with a bust of some old pope.
Haha. Wow, okay, they're really leaning into the whole indie improvisation thing.
Yeah, and reviewers say the combat system is designed so every hit feels impactful.
All right, that sounds awesome. I'm sold on the combat. But I gotta ask, how open is the world? Is it a giant sandbox or more structured?
It seems like it's kind of in between. Not a full open world, but not just linear levels either. They've got a mix of linear sections and hub areas you can explore.
So you're not just constantly running from point A to B. There's some room to breathe, soak in the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. Reviewers are comparing it to some of those classic indie games, like Fate of Atlantis or Emperor's Tomb, a good balance of focus objectives and freedom to explore.
Okay, that makes sense. But here's the most important question. Does it actually feel like an Indiana Jones game?
From what we're seeing, the answer's a huge yes.
Really?
Reviewers are raving about how well it captures the spirit of those original movies.
So we're talking...
Globe-trotting adventures, dangerous puzzles, breathtaking locations. And of course, you can't forget about the music. That classic John Williams-inspired score instantly takes you back to those films.
Oh, man, you had me at John Williams. There's nothing like it. But what about Indy himself? How's Troy Baker doing as the voice?
Apparently fantastic. People are saying he really nails Indy's charm and wit without just doing a straight-up Harrison Ford impression.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. Got to evoke the character, but not make it a caricature.
Right, and it sounds like he found that sweet spot.
That's great to hear. I'm actually getting pretty hyped for this game. But what about the technical side? Any issues with the game itself?
Initial reports are mostly positive, especially on PC. People are getting smooth frame rates, even on older hardware. And they had a day one driver update that fixed a lot of the early problems.
The classic day one patch. Gotta love them. But at least they're on top of it. Though I did see some forum posts mentioning a few bugs.
Yeah, some reviewers did point out some weird enemy AI behavior. And the occasional glitch here and there. Nothing game-breaking, but worth noting.
Fair enough. So we've got amazing reviews, unique gameplay, faithful adaptation. But there's also a healthy dose of skepticism, especially in the forums.
Yeah, and it's understandable. Gamers have been disappointed before. They're not going to blindly trust hype anymore.
Right, like that whole The Last of Us Part 2 situation. Perfect scores, but a really divisive story alienated some fans.
Exactly. So just because Great Circle has glowing early reviews doesn't mean everyone will love it.
So I guess the question is, should you, the listener, be excited for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle?
Based on what we've seen so far, it looks promising.
It does, but there are definitely some things to consider. We've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to unpack.
So buckle up. Get ready for part 2 of our deep dive. We'll be going deeper into the visuals, the story, and whether this game truly lives up to the legacy.
We'll see if it's worth grabbing your fedora and whip for. So we know Indiana Jones and the Great Circle seems to nail the gameplay and that classic indie feel. But what about the visuals? Are we talking cutting-edge graphics or something a little more retro?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some of those green shots look amazing, especially the ones in the tombs, all those ancient details. But I've also seen some comments about the character models looking a little weird.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. The environments get a ton of praise. Reviewers say the art direction is spot on. That perfect mix of exotic locations, historical details, that classic indie look.
But the character animations aren't quite as impressive.
Seems like it. Indy himself looks good overall, but some reviewers mention that his facial expressions and movements, they can feel a little stiff, a little unnatural.
Uh-oh, are we talking Uncanny Valley here?
Maybe a little, yeah. Some people said some of Indy's expressions are kind of creepy.
Oh man, the Uncanny Valley, nothing's worse than that. Like those super realistic robot dolls, just give me the chills.
I know, right? But the good news is, even with those imperfections, most reviewers aren't letting it ruin the experience.
So it sounds like the consensus is, even if the graphics aren't perfect, they don't take away from the gameplay or the story.
Exactly. It's the overall experience that matters, and in that department, Great Circle seems to deliver.
Good point. Especially with a franchise like Indiana Jones. The story and the atmosphere are so important. Speaking of the story, a lot of people are wondering where this game fits into the timeline. Is it a prequel, a sequel, something else entirely?
Ah, the mystery deepens. Based on clues in the game and hints from the developers, it seems like Great Circle takes place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom.
Oh, interesting. That's a period we haven't seen much of in the movies. Just little glimpses here and there, plenty of room for new stories.
Exactly, and that's what MachineGames is doing. They're using that gap to tell an original story that still fits within the established canon.
So it's not directly connected to any of the movies, but it doesn't contradict them either.
Right. It's its own standalone adventure.
That's actually pretty smart. Gives them more creative freedom to explore new ideas and characters.
Totally. They can create something fresh and exciting, but still stay true to the spirit of the franchise.
I mean, it really plays into that sense of adventure and discovery that's so central to Indiana Jones. He's always on the hunt for some lost artifact, exploring new places, facing danger.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like Great Circle really captures that feeling. The reviews are full of praise for the exploration, the thrill of finding secrets, solving puzzles.
Yeah, it's all about immersing yourself in that world, seeing it through Indy's eyes.
But we got to address the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say the nuked fridge in the room.
Oh boy, here we go. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, exactly. Some fans are worried Great Circle might have some of those questionable moments. The ones that made people think the franchise had jumped the shark.
Well, from what we're seeing, you can relax. Nothing in the reviews or the forums suggests anything that crazy.
So they're not shying away from those pulpy, over-the-top elements, but they're also not going too far with it.
It seems like they found that sweet spot, which is a tough thing to do.
Definitely, especially in a video game. It'd be so easy to go overboard with the explosions and crazy stunts.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like Great Circle is more grounded, focusing on those tense, close quarters encounters, the clever puzzle solving, like in the movies.
It's about using your brain and your skills to overcome obstacles.
Yeah.
Which is way more satisfying than just button mashing.
For sure. And, it's interesting. It seems like Great Circle is part of a bigger trend in gaming. A move away from those huge open worlds that were so popular, back to more focused, story-driven adventures.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Sometimes you just want a game with a great story, a world you can really get lost in.
Right. And it sounds like Great Circle is doing that really well.
It really is. It shows that even with all the amazing technology in games today, it's still the story, the characters, the emotions that really matter.
Totally agree. Speaking of connecting with the game, there's been a lot of talk about the difficulty. Some people are worried it might be too easy. Others are hoping for a real challenge.
Well, good news. It sounds like Great Circle has a pretty customizable difficulty system.
Oh, so you can adjust the challenge level to your liking.
Yep, exactly. Reviewers are praising the game for having a range of options, from a relaxed mode for people who just want to enjoy the story, to a hardcore setting that will test even the most skilled players.
That's fantastic. Not every game does that, and it's a great way to make it more accessible. to a wider audience.
Absolutely. It shows that the developers understand that fun is different for everyone. What's challenging for one person might be frustrating for another.
Exactly. That's why customizable difficulty is so important. It lets players tailor the experience to what they enjoy most. It really does sound like they've thought of everything, huh? To make this game enjoyable for just about anyone, we've covered the gameplay, the world, that surprisingly deep story, even the difficulty settings. But is there anything Indiana Jones and the Great Circle doesn't do well? You know, those little things that might make you think twice before buying it.
Well, there is one thing that keeps popping up, and it has to do with the pacing. Some reviewers felt like the early game was a bit slow, especially compared to how fast-paced the movies are.
So it's not nonstop action and adventure right from the start.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
It seems like they spend some time setting the stage first, introducing the characters, the mechanics, before things really get going.
That makes sense. You don't want to overwhelm players with too much action too quickly. Sometimes a slower build-up can be.
Yeah.
It gives you time to connect with the story, the characters.
Right.
But for those people who are craving that classic indie thrill ride, does the game eventually pick up the pace?
Oh yeah, definitely. Once the story gets rolling, it sounds like it really takes off. Reviewers said the later levels are full of action, big set pieces, those exciting chases, just like the movies.
Okay, so patience is key.
Yeah.
You got to let the story unfold, but then you get those classic indie moments.
Exactly.
What about the length of the game, though? Is it a short adventure or a really long one?
It seems like it's somewhere in the middle. Most reviewers finish the main story in about 20-25 hours. But there are a lot of side quests and collectibles to find, so you can easily spend more time if you want to explore everything.
That's a good length, I think. Not too short, not too long.
Yeah, seems like they found a nice balance there.
So we've talked about the good, the bad, even the kind of slow parts. But the big question is, should you, the listener, play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle?
Based on everything we've seen, I'd say it's a must-play for fans of the franchise. It captures what we love about those movies, the gameplay is fun and unique, and the story is a great addition to the Indiana Jones world.
Yeah, and even if you're not a diehard indie fan, but you enjoy those single-player action-adventure games, with a mix of action, stealth, puzzles, then it sounds like this game is worth checking out.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the best things are hidden. You got to be willing to explore, take a chance, to discover something special.
Well said. Yeah. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. We've gone through the reviews, the forum discussions, all that good stuff. Hopefully you have enough info now to decide if this game is for you.
And remember, the greatest adventure is the one you choose.
So grab your fedora, crack that whip, and get ready for a wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.